them 9-iron for him. They're going to go nuts when he hits this thing.
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Yo, yo, yo. Welcome back in, golf fans, to another Preferred Lines podcast and live stream. My name is Joe Idoni. At Tour Picks is where you can find me on Twitter, and I have an absolutely incredible show lined up for you tonight to cover our second signature event of the season. The top players in the world are going to be taking on Pebble Beach this week. I'm excited to break that all down, have an awesome course preview. We're going to bring a fantastic guest on, making his second appearance on the show, and it's been quite some time, so super fired up to talk to him in just a moment. Before that, I wanted to mention this show is proudly presented to you by the team over at Rotoballer. That consists of Joe Nicely, myself, Spencer, Model Maniac, all the boys, as well as Matt Miller and a bunch of other guys producing fantastic content. They have a promo code right now, new, NEW. If you are not currently a subscriber to the Rotoballer team, I would greatly appreciate it. That promo code is going to get you all access to everything PGA for less than $5 a week. It, in my opinion, is the best value deal in all of the content space. So I hope that you will enjoy that promo code. Less than $5 a week. NEW is the promo code. Also, I have to mention, if you're here, you need to be in the one and done contest that I'm running this year. This is my first year venturing into this. I'm going to show you what it looks like now. If you have not heard of Splash Sports, you think you haven't, you probably have. They purchased Office Football Pool. They purchased RunYourPool.com. All of those pools, I was a part of them. You've heard the nightmare stories. I know the one last year, there's Venmo accounts being frozen, money being seized. This is 100% legal. It is all run directly through the app. I do not hold any of the money. If you go to the splashsports.com homepage, you will see this on there. There's also a link in the description to this show on YouTube. Click the link. The app is super clean as well to use from your phone. This is sort of the payout structure. If we're able to fill it, it looks like we already got 44 people in there. Okay, we still got 3 days to go. I'm confident that we're going to get there. Payout structure, first place a little over $8,000, paying out the top 10 places. Make sure to hop in there. That would be like, people ask me for real all the time, like, how to support the show. I try to give back to people. I sent someone a bunch of free swag last week. I gave away $200 the first week of the show. This is how to do it. The show's 100% free. Support the stuff that I'm kind of involved with, and I greatly, genuinely appreciate that. If you want to jump with the team in Rotoballer, if you want to join the one and done contest, that means a whole ton to me, and that would be awesome. Now, without further ado, welcoming back on to Preferred Lines, one of the absolute, I just tweeted this out, but like, I know Chad is super fired up for it. There are so many people that have sent me private messages that they are excited to get this guy back on a YouTube screen talking professional golf. You know him at ePat Golf on Twitter. Welcome into Preferred Lines. Let's talk Pebble. Eric Patterson. What's up, brother?
Let's do it, Joe. Yeah, happy to be back. Thank you for having me. It's like you said, it's been a while. Your setup definitely didn't look like this the last time I was on the pod. So you've come a long way. It's looking sharp. So yeah, happy to be here. Happy to talk Pebble.
Thank you, man. Like I mentioned, you've been one of the people who have been doing it for so long, one of the OGs of golf Twitter. How have you, Eric, kind of seen, like, big picture, the space sort of evolve since you originally started here? Do you feel like people are more into it now? Is it a bigger reach in terms of an average fan and linking that with betting, or are we still a long ways away from anything you see at the score in other sports?
Yeah, it's a good question about the other sports. I mean, yeah, based on what we do at the score, golf is still pretty niche. Like football just completely dominates. There's nothing really coming close to second. But in terms of like golf Twitter, it is crazy. I started doing this, yeah, maybe like 2015, 2016 with like Kenny Kim and Rick when he was running his old site. Yeah, it's been so long to think about, but there are just so many more voices, so much good information. I mean, there's guys coming up left and right now that have good stuff, and I guess, and this is maybe where like what happened to me. I kind of fell into the background a little bit and kind of lost myself there and jumped ship to the trading team. It just, part of me just didn't think I could really compete with like some of the content creators out there. So I did like that weekly grind, breaking down odds boards every week and doing that. But I actually jumped on the other side of the screen and was the bookie for a bit, which was also fun. So yeah, now I'm back into the streets, not really producing as much content, but definitely got my golf hat back on and excited to talk Pebble. But yeah, it's been a long journey, but yeah, there's just so many guys like yourself, like Kenny, like what Rick's doing with CBS. It's crazy how far people have come.
Yeah, man. I mean, I've reached out to you probably the last 2 years to get you on the show, and I know that you couldn't do it because you were on that other side of this trading desk, like you mentioned. The Score bet is obviously live there in a section of Canada. It is the same partners with Penn, who now operates ESPN Bet. So it's nice to have you back in the content game. Let me ask you sort of about the PGA Tour and the status in general. I talked with Andy Lack a few weeks ago, and we kind of had the similar conclusion that the tour's biggest asset may be its depth and the drama that it's able to create through such depth. You look at the recent batch of winners. We're a month into what was a tumultuous offseason of players bailing, of merger agreements, of lawsuits being dropped, of sponsors being out. And we get the first month of the season and we have winners that include Chris Kirk, Grayson Murray, an amateur, and now Matthew Pavon. Why are we getting these results? I'll just leave it there. Why do you think this is happening?
Yeah, that's a good question. Everyone's going to point to like the watered down PGA Tour, but like you said, the depth, the churn that they can create, and they're trying to create at the bottom of all these up and comers. They're picking Pavon, for example, one of the better guys on the European Tour, picking him up. Obviously, Nick Dunlap was a USAM champion, so they're able to get him a sponsor's exemption. It just shows that these guys waiting in the wings and in college. We've seen it with Aberg turning Aubert, I guess is the proper pronunciation, turning pro so quickly and winning. That's just something that the PGA Tour is always going to have if they keep their current system, that next man up type system. Whereas if you close it off, you're not going to have the Dunlaps of the world who are now like, I don't know, 100-1 in an elevated event, which is pretty respectable for his,
Absolutely.
I don't know exactly how many starts he has on the PGA Tour, but it's no more than 5, that's for sure. So
Right.
they have to lean into that at the same time, trying to elevate their superstars is what they're doing and with these signature events. So it's a bit of a tricky spot to, talk about your depth where, a lot of people really only care about the top 10 players in the world. So you do have to create those stars, but those stars do have to come from somewhere. And if the PGA Tour is that spot, then I think they're still in a strong position.
It's funny. I think that there is a necessary balance sort of between the two where the tour needs its stars. It needs its stars to win and win a lot. But there's also a compelling sense of drama when you see something like Dunlap was able to do a couple of weeks ago, or Grayson Murray get into a playoff and be able to sort of take out Keegan Bradley and other top players. But ultimately, you want your Scotty Schefflers, your Rorys, these guys to sort of grab the reins on the tour. It was interesting. I think all of last season in whatever 42 events there were 3 winners at over 100-1 odds. This season, we've had 4 events and all 4 winners come above that price. Is this the week, or do you see something sort of the tide coming back to regressing to the norm at some point here, or is this kind of the reality of what you envision the 2024 season being like?
I thought last week would be that change of
Me too.
direction, just because Torrey Pines is kind of set up for those longer bomber US Open type winners. I thought Aubert could be there. I mean, Højgaard's pretty solid. He was in the mix, but it's got to be this week. I think everyone's kind of, those 4 stories are great. I'm sick of seeing, the lineup of the last 4 winners, all like 150 to 300-1. It's like, all right, we need like a 20-1, 18-1 that we can all kind of get behind. Maybe a couple of them battling it out, but yeah, it's time for one of these big boys to step up and win, because I don't think I could handle my poor. Actually, that's one thing. I've ventured into the top 20s, top 10s this year, so I'm not doing terribly chasing these winners, but like the outright market, these sports books are just completely raking right now because it's just incredibly unpredictable. So yeah, it's time to turn things around here.
They're completely raking, and they're effectively giving the winning player odds of winning at less than 1% each of the last 4 weeks. 150 to 1 is like 0.75%.
Yeah.
500 to 1 is 0.2% chance of winning. And they're not getting beat by it because we're not finding them as bettors for the most part. The other interesting element that takes place this week, and why I think the tour will be very much hoping for one of these big names winners, is Liv begins their season this week. Kind of a weird off season for Liv. They momentarily seem to have reached an agreement with the PGA Tour and DP World Tours before that deal stalled. Then they took the PGA Tour Player of the Year. They went and took the DP World Tour Player of the Year and grabbed Tyrrell Hatton this morning at OWGR ranking of number 16. Do any of these players actually increase their exposure of sort of moving a needle from a viewership and popularity standpoint, do you think?
Man, yeah, I haven't. So when I stepped away from golf content, Liv showed up, and then I took those 2 years off. So it's been actually refreshing for me to not have to talk about it on a weekly basis. But Jon Rahm is a huge loss. There's no doubt about that. Like, he's arguably the best player in the world. He's now playing on a different tour that's not the PGA Tour. It's baffling to think about how far we've come, and that's the current situation of the game. It sucks for us fans. Like, can you imagine if Rahm and Cam Smith and DJ and Brooks were all teeing it up at Pebble this week? It'd be unbelievable. But yeah, we're getting robbed. In terms of Liv, like, I tweeted this out this morning. Like, does Rahm even have an official team? They tee off in 4 days. Like, what? I know it's Legion X, whatever, 13 with probably Hat, and it's all just rumors. It's crazy how they just don't know anything officially. I bet you the general sports fan doesn't know Liv's season starts this week and Jon Rahm's about to play golf, under a new league. It should be one of the top stories in sports, but it just, no one cares about Liv, in my opinion. Like, the golf itself. And I think the offseason kind of showed that, because Matt Wolff got traded for the Player of the Year on Liv. Like, if the golf matters, you're not making that deal. I don't care how good Matt Wolff could be. It's just a stupid trade. It didn't make any sense. So until they take their own product serious, I don't think, how can any fans kind of take their product serious? So for now, it's just going to be a poaching game until they can get to the table and make an agreement.
You think that grabbing the 3 top players that they were able to get this off season, do you think that helps or hurts their chances of finalizing this agreement to merge?
I saw this morning that the PGA Tour is getting multi-billion-dollar investment that doesn't include PIF.
Right. SGP, right?
Yeah. If the PGA Tour wants this to end, they gotta at some point make a deal with the PIF. As unfortunate as that is, after bashing them for so long and then making that handshake agreement, and then now they're going away again. It's just, I don't know. The state of golf is in shambles, to be honest. And it just couldn't, the Masters can't come soon enough when everyone's together and we can kind of stop talking about 2 tours and focus on the tournaments that really matter. But I probably won't watch Liv, because I don't have the Liv account to sign in and watch it, and it might be on TV up here in Canada, but I'll be interested to see how Rahm does. But after a few rounds, he's either going to be destroying the field, or he might just pack it in like some of the other guys on that tour. But I'm not overly interested in seeing how that season unfolds.
I've watched a good bit of it. I went to a Liv event in Miami, actually. I feel like, while reluctant, I was maybe a little bit more open to the reality that this is where this is happening, and trying to sort of, be able to be knowledgeable and produce some content around it. I think their TV deal sucks. No one knows when they play. These are their biggest hurdles that no one really watches, and they haven't figured out any way to make the team element compelling whatsoever. But they have great players. And if they can sort of lean on that, like if Mayakoba comes down to the stretch and it's DJ, it's Cam, it's Rahm, and it's Brooks, and it's Tyrrell Hatton, like all top 5, and we end up getting Pebble that's Steven Yeager versus Denny McCarthy and a couple of other guys, then it could eventually become a problem. And I think that it accentuates like their willingness to come to the table with something deal worthy. Like the PGA Tour, I think, needs to get a lot of these guys back in their events. There's some of the personalities. What about Anthony Kim? Like, is this guy? I do think is a needle mover, and I think that I think you, EPAT, would download the Live Golf app if Anthony Kim was playing in Vegas in what is it, 1 week? Yeah, he's in Vegas next week.
Yeah.
It's his only option, right? Is to join Live. Like, he can't try to come back and play in the PGA Tour. He has to go to Live and take the payday and take the insurance payout. And that's the only path that I really see for him. But I wonder how long until that wears off if he's not the player he once was, which
like
has to be impossible.
he's taken Jeff Feinberg brought this point up, and I'll give him credit for the point. Like, the aura around Anthony Kim is the fact we have no idea if he's still any good. Like, we saw him when he was a young partier, just shooting whatever he shot at Augusta that one day and playing on Ryder Cup. Like, that's the lasting memory we have of him. If he comes out and shoots, 75, and he's at the bottom of the Live leaderboards, like, okay, he's just kind of washed up, like a lot of 38-year-olds who have been at a professional golf for a while. So he would be taking a giant risk in terms of, I mean, he better get a lot of money. I think that's just kind of like, he's going to have to get a lot of money to kind of come back and do that to himself. Like, he's going to be under a tremendous spotlight. I'd probably tune in to watch Anthony Kim play golf. But if he's not any good, then I'll probably turn the page pretty quickly too.
You're right. It's going to last for maybe 9 holes. And if he's 4 over par, it's over with. But, here's one thing that I will give them credit for. They've totally adapted in many ways fast. Like, it takes the PGA Tour years to make any sort of adaptation or progression. And Live just like on a whim, just adds another team. They've now added these individual spots where players can play without a team. And I think that that's Anthony Kim. Like, they created those spots because there's no place on a team for Anthony Kim right now. So if he wants to come and play 4 events a year, they're going to let him in the field because they want the viewership numbers. Now, an interesting thing last year, and I'm interested in your opinion on this because I don't know how true it was, but Live effectively did not have odds in the majority of U.S. states operating sports books and odds. From my understanding, including Florida, I still don't see odds up now. From my understanding, they failed to complete the necessary paperwork that, in layman's terms, basically said this is a fair contest and it's not predetermined or fixed, a la professional wrestling. And they didn't sign or return the paperwork, so they were only available in like New Jersey and Las Vegas, but the majority of states didn't want to touch it. How did things? Do you have any insight on that from the score perspective, or from Penn, or what's going on, and if any progress has been made there this year?
Yeah, like in the earlier stages, Ontario has pretty relaxed betting rules. Like, we can offer a lot of things. Some states definitely have a lot more strict rules on what you can and can't bet on. And one of those is there's like a company called US Integrity that basically, it's like a third party company that does a lot of investigations into match fixing and, making sure every event and tournament and game being played is legit. And a lot of sports books rely on them heavily. Like, if they allow it, if they deem it like a regulated, by the book type operation, then they'll offer it. And apparently Live they're just tough to track down. They're not, as you can tell, like, their communication's not the greatest from what I can see. They got a lot of balls in the air trying to, figure out their format, what team Rom's on, and responding to an email from, US Integrity might be not at the top of their list. But apparently they've reached a deal, or there's one coming, or Live US Integrity is, researching it or looking into it or whatever it might be. But it does sound like it's in the pipeline. But like, there's no odds up for them right now because the field list hasn't been released. So it's just one of those things where their priorities are different than us from a gambling community. Like, we want to see the odds. They're just like, we just want to try to put an event together. We don't care if someone can bet $100 on who wins this event. So I think it would boost their viewership tremendously if they, realize the audience they could have. But for now, that's just not a priority.
I've argued that point as well. One of the things that I think boosted the PGA Tour viewership numbers last week, And you know what else it allowed us to do? Okay, so they went Wednesday to Saturday. I don't think that's a terrible idea throughout the fall swing or throughout football season, basically till the end of the Super Bowl, for them to pivot toward that schedule. I also love the fact that we got odds for the next event on a Sunday. You were one of the first person to tweet it out. So we get odds out over the weekend and we can kind of start doing our research on a Sunday. And that Saturday finish also I thought was great. They do it this one week at the Farmers, but I think that it should be something they potentially embrace next season throughout the fall swing. It gives us another weekday to sweat golf from the office. What was your opinion on it? Do you see that as a positive thing that could happen for the tour?
I think the one-off week, it doesn't work just because it throws the cadence of the rest of the year off. But if you start Jan 1 at the Century and say, we're doing Wednesday to Saturday and until I guess the waste management, because you kind of want that Sunday finish right before the Super Bowl. So maybe that's the first event of the year where it's a traditional Thursday to Sunday. But once people are used to it, I think it's great. Like you said, like it's an extra day in the week. It makes that Wednesday go by a lot quicker when you got something to pay attention to. So I think they should definitely lean into that. And college football is huge down there too. It's not as important up here in Ontario. So I don't mind the fall swing having golf on the weekends, but I also think you could avoid the NFL beast again in the fall. And I think the players might appreciate it too. I don't know. They might like a Sunday off once in a while. I think they should definitely lean into that a lot more.
Okay, one more question before I get to sort of the course preview. This event has changed a little bit this year. So we ditched Monterey. We're now down to 2 events at Pebble and Spyglass. And apparently, from my understanding, there are going to be no amateurs playing alongside the professionals on the weekend. The way my brain works, I think this is an avenue for course setup officials and superintendents to potentially take a few more chances on pin locations and make the course play a little tougher. It sucks because Pebble Beach, there's probably more 20 by 14 pictures in hallways of Pebble Beach than any other course in the entire world. It's iconic, it's historic, and it's been overtaken over the last 25 years by distance and power. So for them to be able to create a little bit more of a defense for the course this week in terms of letting the rough grow up on the weekend, not cutting it down on Saturday morning, creating some drama through pin locations and potentially a more difficult setup for the pros, I think could be great for this tournament, especially given the signature event status. Do you read that into maybe the changes to this event being a possibility this week?
Yeah, I didn't really think about the difficulty of the event, but you're right. Like they can actually use some tougher pins and let the rough, like you mentioned, grow on the weekends. Like that's the pro-am aspect of it. They don't want these businessmen and celebrities getting their asses kicked for 3 rounds. So to do it, I guess they're only playing 1 round of Pebble now, so you could definitely
1 round of Spyglass.
Yeah, 1 round of Spyglass, 1 round of Pebble. But I think that's actually an interesting point. So you might not see the winning score. I don't want to guess. I mean, the weather's going to play into a factor too, because apparently it's not going to be that great. But I just pulled up the winning scores. It's in the high teens for the last since 2016. It looks like Snedeker in 2015 was 22 under. So, I mean, if there's a winning score bet out there, you could probably be able to tell it after round 1, how hard the course is actually going to play. So that's actually an interesting angle.
Yeah, you're right. Remarkably consistent winning score. Justin Rose -18, Hoagie -19, Berger -18, Taylor -19, Phil -19, Potter -17. Like 6 years in a row. That's pretty remarkably consistent. Let me go over to the course preview. I'll give you a couple more of my notes. All right, so like you mentioned, we're going to be at Pebble Beach the entire weekend. 6,960 yards. Spyglass barely a little bit longer, just over 7,000 yards. Typically plays more difficult than Pebble Beach, albeit pay close attention to the weather. You mentioned it. I would imagine that they do preferred lies both Thursday and Friday this week. It's been extremely wet over the last 2 months in this area of the country. They're expected to see more rain this week. I would imagine you're going to see a ton of plugged balls in the fairways and very little rollout. So both courses, maybe that makes them play a little bit longer, but overall they're really short. Look, you mentioned the consistency of winning scores there, I think is an interesting note. Here's the thing at Pebble. You got to crush the first 6 holes. There are 3 par 4s in that stretch that average 370 yards between the 3 of them. Those are easy holes. 2 easy, gettable, eagle out par 5s are in there through the first 6 holes. So you've got to go, in my opinion, a minimum of 3 under through those first 6 if you really want to compete. Holes 8 to 14 are a little bit tough before it sort of relinquishes a bit at the end there. In my opinion, from previous years' notes, off the tee prowess is largely devalued at this event. You don't hit a ton of drivers. On a good day, you may hit as many as 9. On a day where there are some players that will hit 6 or 7. The fairways are really wide. Accuracy isn't a huge deal because you can kind of be in the rough. There just isn't like holes number 8 where you have the cliff there. There just isn't a lot of advantage to having extreme off the tee, like elite ability here. Smallest greens on tour, you're going to hear a ton about it, but I will say the greens in regulation percentage here is actually higher than tour average. The reason being, you're hitting wedges almost all day. You're more accurate with a shorter club, and it's easier to hold those greens with a shorter club. So you hit more greens than you would at the Farmers here, even though they're only 3,500 square feet, because you're coming in with pitching wedge and 9 iron versus 4 and 5 iron. There's 116 bunkers at Pebble, which, like, just in my mind, thinking about the course, it seems like a lot. That's like 6 per hole. I don't remember there being that many bunkers, but it's a ton. There's obviously one gigantic water hazard that is the Pacific Ocean. In terms of approach shot distribution, 45% of your shots come from 75 to 150 yards. That's well above tour average. You're going to want to pay close attention to how your players perform in that range. But the sneaky one, Eric, is 200 to 225 yards. I think that you should implement this in your models if you're making those and consider them, because that's essentially your approach shot on all the par 5s, which you have to score on. That's going to be 2 of your par 3s. And whatever club you hit 215, 220 yards, you're going to take that club off the tee a good bit here it's in terms of my theory. So if you're really good with a 4 iron, you're going to use that club a lot and feel very comfortable off the tee. And then you've obviously got to have a hot putter here. You look at what Nick Taylor and previous winners have done. I mean, just look at Denny last year has had great course. Look at the 2 best players at this event over the last 10 years. It's Jordan Spieth and it's Jason Day. Arguably the 2 best putters over the last 10 years. When you zoom out very long term, you got to bring a hot putter. Those are kind of my cliff notes on this event. Do you have anything in particular to add there that you've noticed?
No, I'm gonna step back and let you take that. That was great. Yeah, like you said, like just the people that can win here. It's the wedge players. Anytime Tom Hoagie's near the top of a leaderboard, that's probably a good indication that it's kind of a wedge fest. Chipping and putting, and yeah, you don't need to bomb and gouge it, kind of like what we thought was required last week. It's almost a complete opposite of Torrey Pines, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So yeah, it brings a lot more players personally for me that I wouldn't typically target into the fold. We'll get to those guys in a second, but yeah, Jason Day, Jordan Spieth. I'm looking at the strokes gains over the last few years. Maverick McNeely, elite putter. Yeah. Bo Hostler, Denny McCarthy. It's who we expect. Peter Malnati. I know those fields aren't as strong as they are now, but it's definitely a shorter hitter's paradise from where they can definitely play well.
Let's look at some guys in the board. All right, we bring in the odds checker grid. Top of the board this week, you have Rory McIlroy coming off a win in Dubai at 8-1. Scotty Scheffler is 8.5-1, just a hair above him. Victor Hovland is 12-1, who won the US Am here. Xander Schauffele 14-1, Jordan Spieth 18-1, Max Homa 18-1, Patrick Cantlay 20-1. Those are your group of players that are all under 20-1. You mentioned it right off the top. It's interesting because you have those guys and names who consistently come to this event, and some of those guys aren't Rory. They aren't Scotty, but they show up here this week because they're obligated in a sense too for this signature event series. What do you make of the top of the board? Is there anything interesting here to you, or a guy that you like up top?
I mean, for me, when I look at the top of the board, it's why am I going to cross him off? I mean, you just harped on how important putting is, and Scheffler has got to be one of the worst putters in this field right now. So he's an instant cross for me. I mean, he could definitely win it, but at plus 850 or plus 800 is just it's not happening. Same with Rory, like obviously fantastic. I'm not going to say anything bad about him, but it just the price doesn't do it for me. The first guy I would maybe consider is Hovland, but again, I like some of the value you can find to Hovland at 20-1. So it's easy for me this week to kind of pass over these first 3-4 guys before I have to start making some decisions. But like I said, it's probably going to be, or at least I'm hoping it's going to be a battle of these big guys. So maybe I should just, back one of them and hope that, Rory's in the mix and he can win.
Yeah, I listen, I hear what you're saying. We're due for that week, and we're due for a Scotty Scheffler like 4-stroke win, or a Rory, but it just doesn't.
Not at this course. It just doesn't feel like it's at this course.
If this was not a signature event, there was 0% chance either one of these guys would be here this week, in my opinion. Yeah. I made one bet. I'll talk about him in a second, but there is an interesting dilemma for me in Hovland and Schauffele, right? I've seen a lot of people on Victor today. Ryan texted me this morning. He's on Victor. I can't do it, Eric, and here's why. Like, when I want to look a little bit at recent form, and when I take a snapshot of Victor Hovland's last 12 rounds played professionally, you've got to go back nearly 150 days to get his last 12 rounds. For Xander Schauffele, you need to go back 21 days. I love the fact that I've seen tournament reps from him, and just the unknown of Victor scares me a little bit. Xander's statistically the best iron player in the field from 75 to 150 yards. And he's better than Victor in that range and at 200 plus. Now, Victor's the best iron player when you look at 150 to 200 yards, but you don't hit nearly as many of those shots this week. He had a magical week at the USAM, of course. But I just kind of think a lot of people will cling on to that. Look, if you look at the U.S. Open, which doesn't show up in these numbers, Xander finished T3 here, and the only players that he lost to aren't in the field this week. It was Brooks, and it was Gary Woodland, and it was John Rahm. None of them are here this week. He had the best round at Pebble on Sunday at the U.S. Open of any player in the top 15 on the leaderboard. Surprise, surprise, right? Xander storms to a T3 finish on a Sunday. But, like, what's realistically Xander's floor right now? Like 10th. He's just easily finishing top 10. And I would normally, and I have done this, to be honest, and knocked him for not finishing and closing the deal. But it just feels like it's like, keep knocking at the door, man. And if somebody's got to open it up. He's playing so well. He likes California. Maybe a little weight off his shoulder, leaving the Farmers and Torrey where he didn't get it done. But the guy lost strokes putting last week at the Farmers and still finished like T9. So a lot of things clicking for him. I'm really, really considering Xander Schauffele. Does that, like, are you going to go Victor there if you had to pick one of those two?
No, you make good points. I think, yeah, I didn't really realize how little golf Hovland's played. You're right. He's only played the Century, and everyone. I mean, for some reason, I guess this goes back to even the U.S. Open. It's like, just because he won the USAM here, everyone's like, "Oh, he loves Pebble." It's like, well, he's probably the best player in that field by a long margin, and he's top 5 player in the world now. So it makes sense that he would win a tournament there. So, you make great points on Schauffele playing well. Like you said, he's keeping knocking at the door. It seems a tad short when I can go down to like Morikawa or even Patrick Cantlay. Like, I feel like Xander and Cantlay have been the same price in every tournament since for the last few years. Like they're kind of right in this same range. And if you can get a 20 on Patrick Cantlay instead of paying 12-1 on Schauffele, it's not like I'm going down to a player who hasn't played well at this event. He's actually someone who does show up at this tournament. He has a handful of top 5 or top 10 finishes here too. So
Cantlay, you mean?
Yeah, Cantlay, that is.
Yeah. 2, I think, top 4s in the last 3 years here. So
I mean, maybe he benefits from the slow pace of a Pro-Am, and if they're getting rid of them, 2 Pro-Am rounds on the weekend, that's not a great thing. The same thing can be said about Jason Day, just kind of more methodical, do like the 5.5, 6 hour rounds. So maybe the less rounds with Josh Allen and the boys hurts their chances. But I still haven't made a decision at the top. I was hoping to come on here and get some clarity, but I am starting to lean towards Cantlay. I see a 20 hanging there, so that's probably where I would go.
It's a really good number. It's a really good number on Cantlay.
Yeah. When I took a look at the board, I just thought he might be in, 14, 16, 20. They're all pretty short, but when you got to put a little bit more down at those numbers, it does make a difference. So Cantlay jumped out to me this morning at 20-1.
Absolutely. It jumped out to me too. I couldn't pull the trigger. I've watched a lot of them. Something is not clicking, I would say, with his approach play. There were a lot of times at the Amex where he had short wedges in that he was like leaving himself 45, 50 feet for birdie and looking extremely annoyed. Obviously, the finishes have showed as well. Like I'm with you. Like I link Xander and Cantlay together. Anytime either one of those guys gets to 20 is when I'm starting to like, I might need to just like blindly bet this guy. But Xander's unequivocally played so much better than him to start the season. The guy for me, and I did get a 20 this morning, I bet Jordan Spieth.
Okay.
Here's the thing, Eric. It's a couple of things. It's a bit of a gut and a bias play, but I also think that if this was not a signature event, he's probably the favorite in the field because he's the best player that shows up. And we always go back to Pebble every year in the past and would harp on sticky course history plays, like play Mav McNeely, pay Kevin Streelman, like just play these Pebble guys, Denny McCarthy. Like these are the guys who eat it up here. And Spieth has the best course history of anyone in the field. He's played it the last 10 years. I think he has 6 top 10s, and obviously the win in 2017, I believe, is the year that he won. I think he looked really good at the Century, and he's putting it much better at both the Hero and the Century. He made some comments at the Hero that he radically sort of changed his offseason approach and was putting way more focus and work into the beginning of the season and starting hot. And I think a lot of players are, because I think people saw like what happened to like Justin Thomas, for instance, last year, and you go through a 3-4 month stretch where you lose it and all of a sudden you're out of the top 30, and it's become more competitive than ever with the FedEx Cup fall swing. So I really think that he put a lot more work and preparation into starting his year off strong. The year that he won Pebble, he finished 3rd at the Century that year. So he finished 3rd at the Century this year. Maybe that's a little note for Pebble. Obviously, the putter getting sort of looking much better at the Hero and Century was a positive sign for me. He gained nicely on approach there, and this is just his kind of golf course. And I think like the Super Bowl, for instance, the NFL conspiracy theorists are out, and like the NFL, it was written all along. They and it's true. Like, who did the NFL want in the Super Bowl? Chiefs and 49ers. Those are the two teams they've wanted in the Super Bowl for 6 months. Who does the PGA Tour want to win this event this week more than anyone? It has to be Jordan Spieth. He's the needle mover of the PGA Tour right now. When he's in contention, casuals watch. You want to go head to head with Liv, and you want a big name player. Who better than Jordan Spieth this week? I'm going to take the 20-1. I would still take an 18 out there and may grab some more, but I think that number could float up a little bit this week because I've heard a lot of Homa, I've heard a lot of Cantlay, I've heard a lot of Morikawa, and just haven't heard much around Jordan. But this is a spot that he loves and he wants to be and has all the history to back it. So I think it's a fair number. He's my guy at the top.
Yeah, you make good points. I'm not typically a Jordan Spieth better.
Me neither.
He just doesn't fit the ball striking models that we all probably tend to run. Very similar type, but 100%. This is definitely the course or a tournament to target him at. I'm looking at the exchange, which is something I picked up while I was on the trading side. He's the 5th shortest on the exchange right now, where you can get him at 20-1. So, I mean, if you're getting a 20-1 in the market, Spieth is probably a fair bet at that price. Not a lot of times you can actually make a fair bet with a sports book. So if you do find a 20 on Spieth and you like his chances, I would recommend that. You were talking about wedges, and I maybe I should have pulled this up before I jumped on, but Justin Thomas is playing pretty well, and I just saw a 28 on my FanDuel up here. So 28-1 on JT after, I mean, the Fortinet doesn't really count because it was in September, but a third at the American Express, kind of a shorter wedge type, not driver heavy set of courses. He doesn't have a ton of experience at Pebble, I don't think. So that maybe doesn't help him. Yeah, he hasn't played here much, but it's Justin Thomas. And if he's playing well, 28-1 seems pretty fair to me if he has turned a corner. So my eyeballs have actually just started to look his way.
Agree with you there. 28-1 is a very fair price. I'm on Spieth. I may go up and grab. I'm trying to figure it out, but I may grab Xander up top, which would eliminate me from this middle range. But that is absolutely a fair price. There are 22s. There's an 18-1 out there, but the 28-1 it looks like is available now at FanDuel. You mentioned it. His wedge play is the strength of his game. One interesting thing to note here, and I remember back to the year that Phil won, and I remember this a good bit from Brooks at the U.S. Open as well. Pebble, when it's very soft, and the conditions will be that way this week, players had the tendency to hit these wedges into the green and literally spin and rip them off the front. The greens are kind of typically sloped back to front. And while they're slow, something about the way that they react with the spin, they really can sort of like rip them back. And what Justin Thomas does, and what Phil talked a lot about when he won, is he was like taking these like dead armed, like 9 irons in from like a gap wedge range and like 3/4ing it and taking all the spin off of it, and it was just hitting and stopping. And particularly when they set up Sunday with those back pin locations, it was impossible for a lot of players who play with a lot of spin to get it anywhere close to the back of the green without going over and into the rough. JT does that really well. He can kind of dead arm 3/4 wedges and flight them really low and get them to spin. Not spin, but take that one hop and stop, which could be very advantageous this week, given the conditions that I expect the players to have to play in. Anyone else, Eric, in this sort of middle range? There's a bunch of good players in 35 to 40. Fitzpatrick, Finau had a good week, although don't get me started on what it looks like on the screen, but he had a good week. Cameron Young had a nice little week at Dubai. Sam Burns is here off blowing a lead to Nick Dunlap. Sungjae, Fleetwood, Benny On, Jason Day. Any of those names pique your interest?
I jumped on a 45 on Fitzpatrick this morning. Not to brag about getting closing line value, but maybe it's because I've liked his chances at this tournament before, and it seems like a Fitzpatrick-y type course where it's chipping and putting and irons and not a lot of driver. You don't really picture him, although he hits it far. He's not one of those bigger hitting guys on tour. So I do have Fitzpatrick, mainly just because he's kind of a really good putter, and it's like him, Spieth, and Jason Day all kind of play that similar style of game, in my opinion. And I bet just the two guys who are a lot longer odds. I think it was like a 50 on Day. So I'm happy with that, just with his course history. The guy loves this place. He seems to play well. I think he missed the cut at the Farmers last week, which is what it is. But I think he's just playing a lot better. And I'll trust him at a course that he seems to just be in complete love with. So top 5 machine here. I'll take my chances on Day at 50. But again, that chipping putting style of player that we're trying to target, and kind of avoiding the Cam Youngs of the world who are going to, and I guess Finau and of that ilk, where they just bomb it away, and you kind of picture them winning at more of like a big boy course. So I'm on Fitzy and Day. I'm not like in love with them. I just thought the numbers were solid, so I went with it there.
Yeah, I actually took Jason Day as well. I actually got 40-1, so I may re-up at the 50. Exceptional course history. I mentioned Spieth has the best here. Jason Day is not far behind. He top 10s it all the time. He just he hasn't won. But he is one. I looked at this kind of number, and the fairways that you hit at Pebble, you're going to be in a lot of them. You don't have to take driver often. They're really wide, and he's been one of the best players in the field at strokes gained approach and shots from the fairway recently. So he's going to be in the fairways a lot. He's going to be able to lift that ball up, put it down, and hopefully stick his wedges close on a place that he is extremely familiar. Lean on that course history. I'm okay with the missed cut last week. Plenty of reps early in the season, which I like to see for Jason Day. And I did kind of look at this. We talked a little bit about it with Victor, and there are some other guys in this range like Fitz. We haven't really seen that much, but I looked at the players who had won here, and granted, the field strength was way different in these years. But when Justin Rose won last year, he played 3 events before this to start his season in January. Tom Hoagie did the same thing. Sony, Amex, and like Daniel Berger played in 3 events leading up. Nick Taylor played in 3 events. These are all in the month of January before this event. So this was their 4th tournament to start a new year, which has me concerned about those players like Rory or like Scotty, who we just haven't seen nearly as much of. I like to see those tournament reps under the belt, which is one of the other reasons why I like in Jason Day at 40-1. And if you can grab the 50 on FanDuel right now, I think it's a great price, and it probably doesn't go any higher than that.
Yeah, I think the market will probably be happy with 50s for the most part. Like you said, yeah, that's a good point on the number of reps. I mean, Rory and Fleetwood have been dueling it out in the Dubai desert for a while. They both have a win, but just feels a little different. I think I'd rather have seen them play, Torrey or the Amex or Century or something. But yeah, I've so far I've only got who is it? Fitzy, Jason Day, and one further down that I'm falling out of love with, but I like the number, and it's Matsuyama. I just think he played well last week.
Yep.
But when maybe I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here, because I shot down Scheffler because he can't putt, and Hideki's equally as bad. But I guess I'm not paying 8-1 on Hideki. But right. I mean, just if he's 7.3 strokes tee to green last week at Torrey, I'll take that all day. Absolutely. Show me a flash. Show me flashes. Maybe he gets hot with his putter. Maybe he doesn't, but I think it's worth the risk.
Same here. I had a 65-1. It looks like there are 70s out there. Just classic Hideki stuff at the Farmers, from the blistering round 2 where he makes his first ever hole-in-one on the PGA Tour, and then these brutal, agonizing just stretches of bad bogeys and failing to get up and down. He basically went all the way back to even par, and then somehow made like 5 birdies on the back 9 in a row on Sunday to finish well. Classic Hideki stuff. I'm back on the bandwagon though. +4 on approach last week. Lost it all back with the putter. No course history here really to speak of for Hideki. Not someone that normally plays this event, but did top 20 at the U.S. Open. He had actually the best numbers in the field from 100 to 125 yards. So he's been really proficient with his wedges now. And another thing that I noticed on Hideki, and this may have, it kind of leans into my talk about Jordan Spieth coming into the season pretty prepared. He plays really well in the beginning of the season. He has 8 career wins. 5 of those career wins I noticed have come in this stretch from January to April. I think it somewhat speaks to his preparation early in the season, and could also mean he has some fatigue to end the season because of that. Only 2 of those wins in his entire career have come from June 1st to December 30th. So he basically, when the summer hits, he's not winning, but he's winning a lot early in the season. I think that could be, maybe something indicative that he's out prepped players to start the season, and maybe some of that fatigue to end. But also on Hideki at 65-1, I'm going to take that price when he's continuing to ball strike it well, and just hope that you land on a decent putting week for Hideki.
It's pretty much all. Yeah, that's all you're doing with Hideki. I mean, going back to his results, he's also has a lot of injuries throughout his career, and wear and tear as the summer goes on. It could definitely grind him down. So maybe a little off season comes in refreshed. I like Eric Cole. I think Henley's good, and Tom Kim's good, but like when Hideki's priced, Hideki who's playing well is priced in a similar area to them, I'm just going to take who I perceive to be the far better player. That's kind of how I usually build my cards, is who seems out mispriced and fire away there. Like, I just don't understand. I know Bo Hostler has plenty of history here. I just don't understand his price. I wish Poston was a lot longer odds than, the 50s and 60s you can get on him, but he's been someone a lot of people have been betting, through the Sony and the Amex. He just seems to top 10 every tournament he plays in, but 60s. What are we seeing here on the board here?
For JT, I saw JT posting at 55, but there's a lot of 45s out there. So
it just seems he's great. I think Data Golf has him as like the top 15 or top 20 player in the world, which could be true, but I'm still not there yet. I'd rather see him clean up at those Wyndham, those lesser tournaments. So I just bypass names that don't seem to fit in the group. And when you land on a Hideki again, who's playing well, that's when I'll fire. I don't have much to add in terms of outrights after this, but I definitely could contribute some, top 10, top 20s, which I know you like to hit your long shots, Joe, but I found some success in the top 20 markets this year.
Absolutely.
Everyone puts in a ton of research and ton of effort, and there's only one winner every week. So when you're combing through the data and picking out guys you think are going to play well, I can't stress it enough. And coming from someone who worked at a sports book, trust me when I say, the outright market is definitely watched a lot more closely than the top 10s, top 20s, top 40 markets. So
good point.
You can definitely find some numbers, as the market adjusts. Maybe someone forgot to go and change the top 20 or the top 40 markets. So you can definitely get some value by just, clicking a few, go to the top finishes page. If the order of players doesn't line up, someone's probably fallen asleep at the wheel.
Are you looking? So obviously those numbers are correlated. When I do top 20s or even top 40s, which I've experimented with as well and had some success, I'm looking for plus money. Like, I'm not going to take Victor Hovland to top 20 this week. That's typically not my style. I'm looking for anyone who's up there like plus money on those type of bets. Is that how you found the best success attacking them, or do you go to the top and maybe drop me, like, before I get you out of here, a name or two that you like this week in those sort of positional markets?
I look at, even money. I'll pay like minus 115, minus 120 on like a top 40 that I like. And obviously, if you're getting ties, you're going to probably pay a little bit more juice if ties are included, which these offerings have started to pop up a lot more. I know Bet365 is now doing top finishes with and without ties. So depending on the event, I'll probably pay a little bit more juice on ties. Unfortunately, no top 40s this week, just because the field is so small. But like JT Poston, top 20 at plus 145 with ties doesn't seem that outrageous. And I'm just looking at the board, Hideki's shorter top 20 odds than Poston is, but you can get Matsuyama at longer odds to win. So this is where, they are correlated. Obviously, there's some players who are more susceptible to finishing top 20 than others, but you can definitely find value, just perusing the rest and not just staring at the outright market. But like Poston at top 20 is I feel like that's a decent look. I don't really know who else here we got. I mean, Nick Taylor, I think I got to back my Canadian brethren.
Got to.
At a tournament, he's won, he's playing well. I'm seeing plus 187 on a top 20 and minus 115 on a top 30. So that's probably will be added to the card at some point as well. Anyone for you? I know, like, this is where you got to go. Brandon Todd's of the world, Christian Bezadenhout, those chippers, those putters that tend to do well here.
Absolutely. Chippers and putters. Like, you've got to have a hot putter in this range. I do like Nick Taylor. I've got interest in Denny. I'm still kind of finalizing my long shots. I'm going to have that piece I'll save a little bit and bury the lead slightly. I'll save the video that's going to come out tomorrow with my 3 or 4 long shots picks. But absolutely, like, extremely sound advice on betting those top 20s and top 40s. If you like a name, continue to play them, especially if you see plus money in those particular markets. Eric, like, It was super informative. It was fun to catch up with you. I thank you. I wish you all the best. It was great that I finally was able to bug you enough to come on the show, and it was great talking to you, man. I wish you all the best, and tell everyone where they can find you and some more of your content.
Yeah, no, if all my content's on the Score app. More than just content, news, sports, all the good stuff. Very popular up here in Canada. Maybe hasn't made its way down to the States, but I'd recommend it. But yeah, I do. I want to thank you for having me on. It's been fun. I haven't been able to chop it up in a couple of years. Appreciate you allowing me to, brush off the rust and get back into it. It's something I've missed, and I truthfully don't know how you do it every week. I can respect the grind. It's you're obviously flourishing and doing well at it. So I can acknowledge when I can see someone like you working as hard as you do. So yeah, keep it up. I'm not here to just pump your tires, but you're obviously crushing it too.
Thanks, buddy. Great to talk to you. Wish you all the best and appreciate your time tonight. We'll talk soon, pal.
Appreciate it. Thanks, dude.
See you, dude. All right, guys. Thank you so much for checking out the show tonight. Quick little, just what I've got for you on final thoughts. Help me out. Help me fill this one and done contest. If you're here on YouTube, there is a link below in the YouTube description to join the contest. It's $100. You can enter up to 5 times. It's really important to me to try to help out my new partners. I've done so with Rotoballer. The promo code is in there as well below if you want to join that team. Anytime that you're able to do these types of things, I am greatly appreciative, and it helps sort of keep gas in the tank for me in terms of keeping this show going and continuing to book fantastic guests and try my best every week to bring you the best golf content that I possibly can. So I appreciate all of you for your support. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a DM. Control what you can control, right? Just keep those couple of things in mind. We're in control of nothing outside of ourselves. I thought, it was funny. I had someone talk to me earlier today about they were just going off claiming ownership of their property. And I walked away and I thought more about it. And I'm like, you don't own anything. Like, you think you're in control of your property. You're not. I live in South Florida. It is a running season every year that my house could be completely leveled and floored. It could jump into a sinkhole. The ocean could take it. Like, you're totally out of control of so many things in your life that you will find much more happiness if you let some of that control go and just focus on what you can do today to make yourself incrementally better. Focus on long-term process goals for yourself. And I hope that you all have a great week. It's time. It's time to hit a winner. I really like Jordan Spieth. I'm going to make my other decision at the top later this week. I will have the full card out Wednesday. Long shots video up tomorrow. You guys are the absolute best for checking out the Preferred Lines program. Once again, my name is Joe Idoni. I'm going to catch you next week with a big show for the Waste Management Phoenix Open and Super Bowl week. I'm out of here. Peace, gang. Love y'all. Later.